I'm Brian Davis, Chair of the Community Foundation, and I welcome you to the Community Foundation's Donors Forum in celebration of National Black Philanthropy Month. We've planned an exciting and interesting and informative program for you today, and we are most thankful for you joining us. Welcome on behalf of the Community Foundation for Northeast Florida, and allow me to introduce you to the Foundation's President, Nina Waters. Nina?
Thank you, Judge. Good morning. I echo Judge Davis's welcome. The Community Foundation has been honored to convene Donors Forum of Northeast Florida for more than 25 years. For more than a decade, the Lucy Gooding Charitable Foundation Trust has been a partner with us, providing a grant and funding that has enabled us to expand Donors Forum programming. Donors Forum is a gathering of regional donors and grant makers represented by community foundation fund holders, private, corporate, independent foundations, as well as the president of United Way, the Nonprofit Center, and the Florida Nonprofit Alliance. We meet 4 to 5 times each year to discuss collaborative opportunities, topics of emerging interest, and issues that impact the philanthropic sector. Today, we're excited to spotlight the legacy and impact of Black philanthropy in our region and beyond. Historically, Black giving has not been associated with philanthropy, but the tradition of philanthropy has indeed been deeply embedded in the culture for generations. We at the Community Foundation know that Black philanthropy is not new. We have been a partner in Black philanthropy in our region for decades and realize that we must work even more diligently to deepen this partnership in future years. You will hear more about our commitment to doing so later in the program. We are currently home to 5 Black agency endowment funds, numerous donor-advised funds, and the Eartha M.M. White Legacy Fund, which will be celebrating 2 decades of impact in 2024, and we're happy that Gregory Owens is here as one of the leaders of that fund since inception. On behalf of the members of our Board of Trustees and our staff, we thank you again for your attendance today as we celebrate Black Philanthropy Month in Jacksonville. We're particularly grateful to our panelists and to our keynote speaker for sharing their experiences and wisdom with all of us this morning. I'd now like to introduce you to another trustee of the Community Foundation, Velma Monteiro-Tribble. She is the Senior Director of Foundation Community Investments with the Florida Blue Foundation, and she will introduce our keynote speaker.
Good morning. And I am going to be quick because I don't want to keep you from hearing from Susan. She is an incredible woman who is well respected, and she's president of the Association of Black Foundation Executives, better known as ABFE. It is a philanthropic organization that deals with advocacy and transformation of philanthropy. I think she joined them in 2009, and since then she has done a remarkable job in increasing the programming, working with foundation leaders, donors, and aligned other folks around the country. She has over 25 years of experience in this arena, so she's not new to it, both in the public and private sector. She has done so much work, both inside of the government. She's been on foundation staffs. I think it was the Anna E. Casey Foundation. See, I know all about you, see, Susan. She's done a lot of work in diversity, inclusion, and a lot with children and families around the country. She's well known for her work, and I'm telling you, sisters in this room, if you don't get her information and you're not a member, you don't want to miss the Black Women Philanthropy Retreat. It is something you want to be at. It's full for this year. It's going to be in California, I think, this year, but mark your calendar to do it next year. It's worth you being engaged in that experience. She received her BA degree, I believe, from Fisk University with the BA in political science. and she has her master's degree from Howard University, both two very esteemed universities. So with that, Susan, would you come? Susan Taylor Batten, would you please come forward?
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. You all have me right off of vacation. This is literally my first day back to work, and I can't imagine a better place to be than to be with you all here. I realize this is my first time in Jacksonville, which is pretty amazing. And I am just happy to say that I landed yesterday, got in the Uber, and then the skies opened up. And that storm came out of nowhere. And so I am just pleased to be here with you all this morning. I am honored to help you celebrate Black Philanthropy Month. And I want to first thank the team at the Community Foundation for Northeast Florida. I don't think I need my glasses. I think we are going to be close friends, close colleagues. It's been wonderful getting to know you all, and I'm looking forward to really doing more work together. And I have the opportunity to really speak about something that is dear to my heart, the legacy and trends of Black philanthropy. And this topic is critically important to me because it's a part of me. It is a part of all of us, particularly people who are of African descent. So this morning, I'm going to try to keep us on time because we have an amazing panel coming up after me. I really want to do three things with you this morning. First is to share with you some facts about Black philanthropy and giving. Second, share a bit about trends in our giving and philanthropy in and for Black communities. And third, share a bit about ABFE, the organization that I have the opportunity to lead. And I'm going to start there and just tell you a little bit about us. We were founded in 1971. Actually, last year was our 50th anniversary. And our mission is to promote effective and responsive philanthropy in Black communities. I am really happy to say that we are growing and expanding rapidly. And actually, our two newest staff members based in Florida are actually here with me this morning. Corey Witherspoon is our new Chief Development Officer based in Miami. And Bria Butler-Gilton is a resident of Jacksonville, right here in Jacksonville. And she's our coordinator of Philanthropic Advising Services. We are a membership association. We have just under 2,000 members around the country, and our membership includes foundation professionals for the most part and nonprofits. And high level, our work really falls into two buckets, if you will. Helping all foundation leaders invest strategically in Black communities, and providing networking opportunities specifically for Black foundation leaders. And this includes Black foundation trustees, as well as foundation staff. While our primary focus is supporting Black and other leaders that work in foundations, the organization does have a history and legacy in organizing work around Black philanthropy in particular. For example, several of the ABFE founders were actually founders of the United Black Fund. Many of you all remember that organization in the late 70s, where Black donors could contribute directly to Black organizations. In the 80s, several members of the ABFE board at that time created the National Center on Black Philanthropy, which was the institution that documented Black giving and kept the research around Black philanthropy. And throughout my tenure, I have been here as president and CEO for 13 years now. We've provided technical assistance to Black civic organizations to help them strengthen their philanthropy. And every year, we actually recognize Black donors at our annual conference. I chose this career, colleagues. I chose the career of philanthropy because I am interested in further building Black philanthropy. And I'll share more about our plans a little later in my talk. So let me turn to the history and legacy of Black giving. And many of you all know these points. I've got about 4 points to share with you. The first is that giving in the Black community is rooted in the culture and history of our people, as the judge introduced, and can be traced back to the African continent. Our ancestors created forms of giving and love for community and our people. So philanthropy for people of African descent is deeply, deeply cultural. At ABFE, we actually use African terms to describe the work that we do to help people understand the connections to Africa. For example, Harambe is the name of our annual conference. It is an African term that means all pulled together, particularly as it relates to fundraising and fund development activities. Umoja is the name of our network of Black Foundation CEOs that meet monthly. It's another African word that means unity. Umoja meaning unity. Chama is ABFE's new work to help build funder collaboratives to support nonprofits in the Black community. Chama is a Swahili word for an informal cooperative society commonly used to pool and invest savings by people in East Africa, particularly Kenya. Or you can think of a word such as asusu, which is a Yoruba term. Yoruba were people from Nigeria. Asusu is akin to an informal savings club, popular in Africa, the Caribbean, and over time here in the United States. Some of the earliest giving strategies of Black people here in the US included such cooperatives, rotation and savings clubs, and burial clubs. So when we speak of Black philanthropy, we must realize the practice of giving has been around for centuries, Philanthropy is a part of our culture and lifestyle that is rooted in African practices. Our good colleague, Valeda Fullwood, author of the award-winning book, Giving Black, reminds us that the images, ideas, and stories about who or what is a philanthropist in this country, particularly during the turn of the 20th century, excluded a large segment of the American people. The prevailing story is that the names of wealthy Americans like Carnegie and Rockefeller and Ford are the architects of giving in the United States. And while these families and those names are important and an important part of the story, it is not the full story of the genesis of philanthropy in this country. The second distinguishing feature or point I want to make about Black philanthropy is that it happens in many, many ways. It is diverse. In this country, philanthropy is often understood as the donation of money. The early founders of the Community Investment Network based in North Carolina, a network of African American giving circles, describes philanthropy as the giving of time, helping out others, volunteering, the giving of talent, lending your skills, pro bono, and the giving of treasure, which is actually money itself. Time, talent, and treasure. That's their frame of philanthropy. And more recently, Black donors have added a fourth T, if you will, and that is testimony, the giving of testimony or one's truth as a form of helping. Think about this. The loose translation of the Greek term philanthropy is love for humanity. Giving of one's time, talent, treasure, and testimony are all expressions of love that can assist others. The deep histories of Black civic associations, the Links, the Masons, the Boulay, Black fraternities, Black sororities, many dating back to the 1800s, are examples of Black philanthropic structures and our ancestors put in place to express our love of humanity and our love for our community. The third feature around Black giving that I want to share with you this morning is that it is giving that is based in deeply held values of collective responsibility and self-help. The widely held perspective, as it's understood in practice today, is often seen as transactional in the US. Philanthropists give to help those who are less fortunate. But throughout our history and today, we give not just to help those who are less fortunate, we give to help ourselves. It is a giving based on a keen understanding of shared fate and the concept of mutual aid. It's an understanding that the well-being of one Black family has implications for another Black family. Much of our giving has been through the church. The church is more than a place of worship for us. It is a vehicle for mutual aid. And this should be the basis of philanthropy colleagues, regardless of race or ethnicity of the donor. We give not just to help those less fortunate, but give to help ourselves. Because how one community fares, regardless of race or ethnicity, actually does impact another community. Fourth point, high-level point about Black philanthropy is steeped in research that some people may not know. So I offer this morning for you as well. Studies by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation show that African American families, more than any other racial group, have contributed the largest portion of their wealth to charitable causes. For example, Black households give on average 25% more of their discretionary income than white households. This is not what the prevailing narrative or image is when we think about philanthropy in this country. And this also busts the myth that philanthropy means writing big checks. While Black people are givers, we give what we have based on our discretionary income. We give more of our discretionary income away than some other racial ethnic groups, but that might mean, in fact, smaller gifts. Through the Kellogg research, we also know that nearly 2/3 of Black households give to organizations and causes, 2/3 of Black households, and that Black households give about $11 billion each year to charitable causes. All of this is true, colleagues. All of this is true. Despite the racial wealth gap in this country, Black households prioritize giving. We prioritize philanthropy. So those are just a few high-level points, some of you may have known about philanthropy. It's deeply rooted in our history and culture. It comes in many forms: time, talent, treasure, and testimony. It is based on deeply held values of collective responsibility and self-help, and we give at higher levels than some other households relative to our overall wealth and income. These are really important features about Black giving that we all need to hold on to. So with that, let me move to the second point that I want to share with you this morning and just share a few trends in Black philanthropy as we see them at ABFE. So we are doing actually our own research on Black funds and Black family foundations around the country. And moving forward, we will begin to organize and network these groups. This fall, for example, we're hosting our first convening of Black family foundations, and we are extremely excited about the possibilities here. So I want to highlight a few trends and areas of interest that are on our radar as we've been moving through our research and planning. The first is a growth in formal giving vehicles. Organized Black philanthropy is actually growing. And when I say organized Black philanthropy, I mean family foundations, donor-advised funds, and giving circles. Organized Black philanthropy is actually trending upward. We know that informal giving, the kind that is hard to see and that the kind that is our everyday giving in our community, will always be the hallmark of Black philanthropy. However, our research on the presence of Black funds suggests that almost 25% were established in just the past 10 years. So this is relatively new growth. And a significant portion of these funds are housed at community foundations. And this is important as well because there have been barriers to increasing the number of Black donor-advised funds at community foundations. One barrier has been an issue of trust. Black donors not necessarily seeing themselves within community foundations, often due to the lack of diversity within community foundations around the country. Another barrier has been the minimum dollar requirements needed to start a fund at a community foundation. I believe the growth in formal Black giving vehicles has been driven by the increase in giving circles. However, I don't think we know much about the actual number of Black family foundations, and this is a huge area of interest for us at ABFE, so more to come on this. Another trend that I want to share with you, and this might be more of something interesting to watch, colleagues, and that's the growing diversity of Black donors. America's Black population is diversifying quickly due to immigration. Today, 1 in 10 Black people in the United States is an immigrant. 1 in 10 is an immigrant, primarily coming from Africa, the continent of Africa, and the Caribbean. The projected US Black population in 2050 is expected to reach 68 million. We're at 46 million now. A significant part of the projected growth comes from immigration, or will come from immigration. I understand here, locally, Florida has seen a huge increase in Black immigrants, an 81% increase from 2000 to 2019. Black immigration trends matter because both education and wealth patterns of immigrants differ from those of US-born African Americans. Black immigrants have higher household incomes on average and are more likely to have higher education than US-born Blacks. These immigrant households are also less likely to live in poverty than US-born Blacks. Yet little is known about the giving patterns and the interests of Black immigrant donors as a group, although my assumption is that there will be many shared interests with US-born Blacks. However, we need to know more about Black immigrant giving and how it will actually bolster the future of Black philanthropy. Again, this is something to watch. The third trend, and one we are excited about, is the growth of philanthropy and nonprofit management programs at historical Black colleges and universities. We are actively involved in this work. Many of you know that there are several university-based centers on philanthropy around the country. Some of the well-known include the Lilly School on Philanthropy at Indiana University, the Dorothy A. Johnson Center on Philanthropy at Grand Valley State University. There are also degree programs at NYU, at Auburn, at Arizona State, to name a few. Altogether, we know of about 14 university-based centers on philanthropy in the country. Currently, colleagues, we only know of 2 philanthropy programs at Black colleges. Paul Quinn College in Texas was the first HBCU to offer such a program in 2013. The Center for Fundraising and Philanthropy there at Paul Quinn offers bachelor's degrees in philanthropic practice. When Quinn College leaders launched the center in 2013, they hoped that it would serve as a model for other historical Black colleges and universities, and it did just that. Southern University was next up. Southern University in Baton Rouge is home to the Baldry Center on Philanthropy. The Baldry Center opened in 2019, currently hosts lectures and programs on philanthropy for students of this HBCU as well as the general public. And the center's future is bright. It plans to offer bachelor's, master's, and PhD programs in philanthropic practice, and it is also building a research capacity to continue the important research and documentation of Black giving. The center is named after several philanthropists, Leon, Warren, and Virginia Baldry, all graduates of Southern University, in recognition of their gifts to their alma mater. And I am proud to be on the advisory committee to the center, and I serve actually as an adjunct lecturer there. So those are the 2 that we know about, Paul Quinn and Baldry, but I'm here to share with you some recently let news from ABFE that we are now helping to build the 3rd. ABFE is partnered with Bowie State University, the oldest of 4 HBCUs in Maryland, which is my home state, and the 10th oldest historical Black college in the country. We are taking an active role in curriculum development. To date, we've organized meetings with Black Foundation CEOs and Black nonprofit leaders to contribute to the curriculum. The program will offer both bachelor's and master's degrees in philanthropy and nonprofit management, and we are co-designing the seminar and lecture series. And we're assisting with the philanthropy fellowship placements within ABFE member foundations. To date, there are 6 fellows working in foundations through this program. These are good paid fellowship positions in foundations. And our philanthropy fellow, Darren Willis, started at ABFE just a month ago. The growth of philanthropy programs at HBCUs is a key pipeline strategy for those looking to work in organized philanthropy, those looking to work in foundations or to become professional fundraisers. However, as important, these programs will ensure that the next generation of Black philanthropists understand the history of giving in our community. Understanding the true story of philanthropy in the United States will help them build on these assets and further opportunities for all people here in this country and around the world. So that was the 3rd trend. The 4th, and the last I'll share, is a note about philanthropy in the area of social change and justice. It's widely known that family, church, and education continue to be the cornerstones of Black giving, both in the past and currently. However, the Donors of Color Network, a new network that's formed, in their report entitled Everyday Donors, reminds us that a persistent and growing theme in Black giving is social change and racial justice. African American giving, from the Underground Railroad to freedom schools to the civil rights movement and now to the movement for Black lives, is about social transformation. As in the past, colleagues, Black philanthropy will always be a form of activism. ABFE promotes a framework for responsive philanthropy in Black communities. and it encourages philanthropists to consider the root causes of injustice, to build on the assets and strengths of Black people, and to give in a way, to do their philanthropy in a way that promotes change and not charity. In doing so, we take our cues from Black philanthropists who have come before us. So again, high level, a number of trends that we are sort of seeing, and I'm sure there are others. Growth in organized philanthropy in terms of family foundations, giving circles, donor advised funds, the possibilities of diverse Black donors given immigration patterns and their level of wealth, an increase in the number of next generation donors educated at HBCUs, and philanthropy programs steeped in our history, and continued focus on social change and racial justice. I want to leave you, colleagues, with just a few last thoughts before I join this amazing panel. All the panelists will undoubtedly share more nuance on some of the points I briefly mentioned, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. But just a few closing thoughts. One, I want to commend the foundation for actually offering this program. I encourage all of us to help change the narrative about who donors are in this country and around the world. And remember to share this truth, colleagues, to share this truth. Despite the structured exclusion of Black people from opportunities to build wealth and attain economic mobility in the United States, we have consistently demonstrated a love for humanity and a propensity to give. I urge to never, never underestimate the power of a small gift. What matters is the true spirit of philanthropy, is the act of giving, not the size of the gift. What matters is the demonstration of love and concern for humanity. I ask that we all support the social justice underpinnings of Black philanthropy, historically and today. Some of you know of Dr. Martin Luther King's thinking about philanthropy. He said, and I quote, "Philanthropy is commendable, but it must not cause the philanthropist to overlook the circumstances of economic injustice which make philanthropy necessary." And lastly, I urge that we continue to lift up the stories of Black philanthropists themselves, which is what this program is about today. We can change the narrative by telling the stories. I'm inspired by the legacy of so many philanthropists, like Oseo McCarty, just one of many stories. Miss McCarty was a Mississippi philanthropist who saved pennies and dollars as a washwoman and donated most of her life savings to the University of Southern Mississippi to establish a scholarship program for Black students. I am inspired by the stories and legacies of your local philanthropists, L.L. Lewis, Eartha and Clara White, Bernard Kenzie, and I look forward to learning more about each of these leaders. So let's all commit to keeping these stories alive. Thank you. Thank you for letting me share with you today.
Thank you so much, Susan. Can you guys hear me? Thank you, Susan, for joining us this morning and certainly laying the foundation for what I hope will be a rich conversation for all of us this evening. My name is Wanda Willis, and I serve as a Vice President for Civic Leadership for the Community Foundation for Northeast Florida. African American giving has been historically grounded in a collective sense of responsibility and obligation towards community, as both Judge and Susan shared with us this morning. It has traditionally been based on a generosity of spirit and an expression of dignity, humanity, and identity. Historically, the term philanthropy has not been associated with Black giving. However, philanthropy has been embedded in the legacy of African American families for generations. This demographic has for generations been meeting the needs for one another through time, talent, and treasure to make transformational change with an undocumented giving, as shared earlier, of $11 billion annually through community investing based on a study done by the Kellogg Foundation. Today, as we celebrate Black Philanthropy Month, we continue to amplify Black giving, and learn more about the impact and legacy of Black philanthropy. So you all are in for a treat. Again, I'll thank you for joining us this morning. We have an amazing panel to share in this rich conversation this morning, and I want all of you to listen and be a part of this conversation. It's how we move things forward. At the Community Foundation, one of our goals is to really listen to the heartbeat of our community, to see where our needs are and how we can better serve our community and build a better and stronger community. So at this time, I would like to ask our panelists to join us here for our conversation. Okay, so as you see, we've got a rock star panel this morning, and of course, many of them don't need an introduction, but I'd like to start off by starting with our panelists. The first panel to my right is to begin by introducing yourself to everyone. We'll start with you, Susan.
Susan Taylor Batten. What else can I say to you all? From New York, born and raised in New York, but actually living in Maryland. Yes.
Good day. There's a tradition in Black communities of saying, say who you are and whose you are. Who am I? There's also a tradition of introducing ourselves by work. So I'll be consistent. I'm an anthropologist, a former college president, a former museum director at the National Museum of African Art in DC. I work in the DEAI space, but most importantly, my work is as a women's rights and civil rights advocate. Whose am I? I'm yours. I belong to anyone who believes that this world, like Sojourner Truth said, has got to get right side up again. But I am the great granddaughter of Abraham Lincoln Lewis.
Now you want to follow that.
And then finally, I am so pleased to be here today with my husband, James Staton, with my only blood brother, I got two of the other kind up here, John Betch.
That was wonderful. My name is Marcus Rowe. Who am I? Okay, I'm going to follow that example. So, been in Jacksonville for 15 years. My primary job is I work in wealth management with Merrill Lynch, but I have many other businesses I am trying to start here, along with trying to be extremely charitable and philanthropic, both here locally as well as in other communities, whether it be in my college community or other places where I've lived around the country. My parents are not from here, but lived here. My mother, who has been a part of, instrumental in some of these conversations early on with this initiative, could not make it, but sends her love and probably get a lot of the charitable giving and things that I'll talk about today from both my parents and that legacy. And then whose am I? I think you said it so well. I want to make impact within the community. And so I would love to partner, find opportunities to educate, mentor, partner, be put to work within our community, to serve our community, uplift our African American brothers and sisters, so that people understand the impact that we are making each and every day, not only with our dollars, but our time and our talent. So, Marcus Rowe.
Thank you. Hi, good morning. Who am I? My name is Valerie Jenkins. I currently serve as Vice President, part of the Social Impact and Sustainability Division with Wells Fargo. I am a born Floridian, actually born in Tampa, but raised in Miami, and now I'm here in Jacksonville. So I've been from one end of the state to the next. Whose am I? I'm going to say I'm Dorothy May's oldest daughter. And if you came from my community, Dorothy May did not play. And so she was a woman that was dedicated to supporting her community and ensuring that her children were successful in whatever we strive to do. I'm also the granddaughter of Willie Chester, and he was the oldest of 10, moved from Sparta, Georgia, in the heat of the night, and we're still trying to figure out why they left in such a hurry at night. We did uncover that at the time of his passing, that there was a mark across his neck, around his neck. And so rumor has it that someone found that he was able to read and that he was hung. Someone cut him down, and they left very quickly in the night. And so we continue to rest on that legacy of understanding the resiliency of who we are, and to make sure that we are we have a constant reminder to our family reunion as to that heritage. And so I'm happy to say that part of what I do in the community with Wells Fargo, and it's really around my commitment and dedication, because that's really what it takes to take us beyond the requirements of our 8-to-5 job, is to really be committed to the work that we do and our engagement in the communities. And so my support goes beyond philanthropic givings, but really around volunteerism. I enjoy serving on boards, and volunteerism, again, is around our talents. And so I do enjoy the opportunity of being able to give back whenever I can, and I'm looking forward to serving on this panel. And I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about as a result of our dynamic keynote speaker we had this morning, but I'm really excited about being here and looking forward to the dialogue.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Christopher McKee, Jr. I am a preacher. I say that today because sometimes I move between the title of pastor and preacher, but for the purpose of talking about historic Black giving, I proudly wear the label of preacher, standing in the tradition of women and men who have spoken to faith, but have also spoken to the importance of sowing into faith. When I think of philanthropy, my start was as a Sunday school runner. Anybody know anything about that? Sunday school runner at the Antioch Baptist Church in Youngstown, Ohio, 110 Funston Street, where the Reverend Alfred Ward was our senior pastor. And my job as a little boy was to go to all the Sunday school classes and collect the money, collect the envelopes, and make sure that the envelopes got to the Sunday school superintendent so that the offering could be taken in for the Sunday school department. When I think of giving and I think of a pastoral ministry that now is approaching 10 years, before that a nonprofit background working around social advocacy and civic engagement, it is the role of those small gifts, those small moments, those opportunities where people have given of their hard-earned resources to see something greater, that has informed my deep love of philanthropy and my deep love of ministry, and the reality that it is through our giving of time, talent, and treasure. And I thought church folks were the only folks that said that. But it's good to know it crosses all boundaries. It's so transformational for our community. So I'm humbled. I really don't know how I got on this panel, but I'm excited to be here today. And I look forward to sharing with the group.
Well, you see, we have a rich conversation ahead of us. This was just the introduction. So get ready. And thinking about how you all got on the panel, I guess I'm just so honored that you all agreed to serve on the panel. You all are amazing in your own rights, but the beautiful thing about it is that you are all my friends, and I appreciate you. So thank you for that. We'll just start with the first question. I'll serve as your moderator. I'll be the Oprah of the day to get our conversation started. And the first question I will direct towards Dr. McKee and Dr. Cole. What has philanthropy looked like historically, and what does it look like today?
I use Dr. Cole.
I accept the yield. I cannot do better than Sister Susan did. It was an extraordinary summary of the history and her story of philanthropy. But I do lift up, for us it began in Africa. And one of the biggest lies ever told is that we stood on the shores of this, our nation, and we dug out everything that was African and left it to come into the New World. Shackled, beaten, put into the hulls of ships as if we were less than animals. We still brought with us our values, our traditions. And we hear those traditions today in ongoing proverbs. Here's one. When spider webs unite, they can tie up a lion. That's what philanthropy is about. Well, we brought with us the tradition of being of service to others. How often has somebody who grew you up, like the folk who grew me up in Jacksonville, said to you, well, my folk would begin with, girl, that's how most sentences began. Girl, doing for others is just the rent you gotta pay for being on this earth. So from A.L. Lewis, from his wife, Mary Frances Sammis Lewis, from Mary Frances Lewis's ancestry that is mine, I know about taking care of other folk. In fact, if I can just take a moment to lift up Anta Majijin Njai, a 13-year-old Wolof girl imprisoned by something called enslavement. And yet, she and others like her, whether on the Kingsley plantation not far from here, or on those wretched plantations throughout the so-called New World, African people took care of each other. How else would we be here if they hadn't done so? And so, no history or her story of philanthropy dare begin here. And yet, Brother Rev, as I pass the word to you, no institution within our communities has been more central than the Black church. Now, educated people can say church all they want to. I'm talking about the Black church. Brother Rev?
Yes.
You couldn't have asked for a better setup than that. So between last night and this morning, as a good student and just lover of books, I actually carried with me Dr. Roberto, who left us around last year, whose prolific work around African American church and slave religion and the notion of the invisible institution. When we talk about the building of Black church life, which number one, very much in keeping with what Dr. Cole has said, is not just an American development. We came with many faiths, one of them being Christianity. And as the church began to grow and develop within the American experience, even enslaved and non-enslaved persons figured out ways to not only worship together, but give together. And it's really important for us to understand that part of the reason why African American churches, and I say that because Black church life is not monolithic. I think often when we talk about Black church life, we talk about it as if it looks one way, sounds one way, acts one way, but we have had church expressions across denominations, across regions, across doctrinal spectrums. But one thing that I think has been a thread that has pulled us together is people with little material wealth. Now, there certainly have always been Black persons with money, but overwhelmingly, we have existed at the lower bottom of the socioeconomic scale, and yet have figured out ways to take meager means and build institutions and organizations and churches, many of which, if we look even in our own city of Jacksonville, that have sustained century and a half plus years of existence. And so that trajectory of families giving out of their own wealth for the sake of faith, so that, when we think of benevolent societies, the idea that people within our churches who perhaps needed to take care of burial costs because we didn't have insurance at first. but these were ways in which we were able to actually create networks and safety nets for each other, and it developed through our lens of faith. So that story is really important because in many ways, it is the space where so many of our families, especially those who might not have come from moneyed backgrounds, learned the notion that if we all are able to give a little, we can build out institutions that are bigger than ourselves in the name of faith. And I think that story is very rich because that's what, in some ways, Dr. Cole, I think I can step, although I didn't study anthropology, I did a history undergrad degree, so I'm far, but I think I'm okay with this. The church became a space where those cultural retentions were maintained in a strong way of mutual community and benefit that we didn't necessarily see in other spaces in America. It's one of the few spaces where we could kind of safely be ourselves. And when I say that, it was one of the few spaces where we were not as surveilled. I hope I'm not being too direct today.
Speak the truth.
Where we weren't under the gaze of the white eye. And that in some ways, that's why there's such a revolutionary impulse within African American religion because of that. So I think it's so important to understand. I argue that you really cannot talk about Black organizational life without first taking a stop at the Black church.
So thank you both for that amazing foundation, which really segues into our next question. And we all know that in order for us to build a better community, and when I say community, I'm speaking of the community of Jacksonville, it means building a stronger Black community so that we are one community. So that really segues into my next question. And Marcus, I'm going to ask you this question. How does Black philanthropy contribute to elevating a stronger community?
Yeah, so thanks for that question. So, I think you've talked about the roots of where it started coming over from Africa. You talked about the church and the church being a foundational institution for collective gathering and giving and making impact. I think when you talk about philanthropy in general, as our esteemed speaker said, keynote speaker said, it is about an outpouring of love, and many people have thought about it as purely in dollars. Time, talent, treasure is important. That last piece that Susan talked about with regard to the testimony, we are used to the testimony in the form of giving that in a church setting, right? But giving that testimony, a lot of times people, when they give, they think of it, they give quietly, secretively, not sure why. Maybe they don't want to be known. Maybe they don't want to know the dollar amount. And it's really not that one person's dollar amount. It's about collectively using all of our resources to get work done and make impact in the community. And so I think what Black philanthropy means, we've done it a lot. We've done it with the church. We've done it with social and frat and sorority organizations. We've done it with regard to certain events, whether it be social justice. We call them social justice initiatives now, but just social justice in general. We've done it when we've gathered around certain initiatives and we've united. But I think too often we unite for a common cause and then we disperse. We unite and then we disperse. So to me, I think, what can we do to unite, collectively hold each other accountable, and give it a meaningful way? And it's not just dollars. I think that's what the real opportunity that we have here. We've been doing it all along, but now, sometimes people won't listen until you have meaningful money, AKA what they'd call skin in the game. So how do you make others listen? How do you make others who don't look like us listen? And I think Black philanthropy not only has the opportunity to bring our values, bring our character, bring our rich history, bring our past. You've heard that discretionarily we give more of our dollars than any other, but one person alone can't make that difference. Collectively, united we can. United we can make impact. And when we're at the table, not only with unity, with dollars, and a clear, focused goal, I think we can accomplish just about anything we want. And so that, and we've seen many times that this happens in the past, but that to me is like, if I paint the perfect picture of what Black philanthropy is and walk that out, it's not just talking about it. We collectively unite, we get together, we have a common cause, and then we go about achieving what we do. So we execute extremely well. So that to me is how it can not only enrich the lives of those that look like us, but it enriches the community because it lifts up every single person within our community. Sometimes those who have the least, right? They have maybe their education. They go to the schools that are maybe not in the best areas. They don't have as much education as much. They don't have as much wealth as much. And one of the things, and we'll talk about it later, but with regard to if life is a race, it's an unfair race. Not everyone gets to start at the same point. If this is the 100-meter race, some people get to start at the starting line while others get to start at the 40. And so it's not fair, but it doesn't mean that the race has to be fair. What we equip you with, the tools we gift you with, the race that we're running, we can give them the same tools, if not better. And so that's, to me, what Black philanthropy would do in order to lift up the entire community.
Thank you so much for that, Marcus. And you talked about collectively organizations and collectively as a people. The next question I want to gear towards Valerie and Susan. Please feel free to chime in regarding what is a misconception that most people have about Black giving and donors.
Well, thank you. I think the biggest misconception is that we don't give. And Susan, thank you for pointing out the reasons why that misconception exists. I mean, in many cases, as you indicated in your opening remarks, we give because of need, and it's embedded. We're generous givers, and I know that because I've experienced it, and I'm a product of it. I know that had not someone helped me, whether I was in school, whether it was me being a mother myself and me helping my daughters, we've always sort of found a way to make sure that our families and our communities around us were protected. I think the one thing that stood out from the readings, and Susan, again, I tapped into a lot of your resources as we were preparing for this panel. The one thing that stood out is that one of the things that we don't do is we don't track our givings in the manner in which large foundations do. Meaning, when I was very young and I would come home from school, one of the things that I just knew to do, that if I saw rain and I saw Mrs. Johnson had clothes on the line, it was my responsibility to take them off, put them in her basket, and put them back on her porch. Whether we know it or not, that's a form of volunteerism. Nobody told me to do it. I just knew that that was something that I needed to do. And so when we start thinking about that way, we don't track those kind of hours. We know that when we help, we're not tracking the hours. So nobody has this grand report to say the number of volunteer hours I'm giving back to the community. So again, it's not reported. No one knows that we actually do it, but it's something that's embedded in us as part of our spirit. The other thing you pointed out was that our giving amounts are very small. We recognize that if we put $25 here, we just walk away. We've given it, it was a cause, we saw the need, and we continued with that. And so again, nobody's keeping track of those $25 that I may have given, or the kids that are standing on the corner during football season with the helmets. When they pull next to my car, I'm giving them $5 or $10, whatever I have, to help them with that league team. Those are kind of things that we do, and we don't track those. But we know that we see them, when I see them on the field, I'm smiling because I recognize that during the time my daughters were cheerleaders, we went through the same process. We may have sold candy or whatever it took, but we made sure that we gave back so that our communities could be successful in that. And I think the other thing that I saw was that one thing that we don't do is actually get credit for it. We're not looking for a certificate at the end of the day that said how much we gave at the end of the year. We gave, we saw the need, and once again, we applied whatever funds we may have had in order to make that work. And I remember very early on, one of the other talents when we give back, which again, we're not counting those as in-kind contributions as you would. But I remember very young, one of my roles were to play the piano doing BTU. Now, I can't hit a note now. But my grandmother made sure I took piano lessons and I had to play. But I knew that if I walked in and no one was playing, that I needed to go and I needed to play during BTU. That was just expected. And so when we just talk about how the church was embedded in us, it's just part of our generous spirit. And so the misconception all exists with the inability to really showcase, report out, and really, stand tall and say, look what I did. And those are kind of things I think it's just over pride that we're told, this is what you do. And I have to tell you, my grandfather said the only time in the Bible that it says, try me, and that's with your tithes and your offerings. And so I remember very young, my grandfather was sharing with someone that, and I remember this, is he said, many of you are struggling with keeping 100%. Try 89%. And I said, Granddad, it's 90%. The Bible says give 10%. And he said, no, you should be able to take 1% of what you earn and give it away, not expecting anything in return. And he said, I'm glad you was listening, but you really weren't listening. And so just throughout the time, it's just been embedded in me to say that 1%, you give it and you walk away. And you're not expecting to be recognized for it. And so I think if you go back and you start looking at those history, the story of our lives and how we have survived, and had we not given, where would we be today? Because there was at one point that we weren't considered human. We weren't considered as a person. But we managed to survive and take care of our communities. My grandfather, and I say that because him and my grandmother was so important in our lives. Back in the days, you didn't have babysitters. You went to your granddad and grandma's house. And so through the whole process, they've always sort of embedded in us, do the right thing. And he says, nothing good ever comes out of anything that's bad. And so a wrong would never make a right. And so he's always sort of pushed instill those kind of things in us. And I'm just excited to know that at some point now, we're getting recognized for our contributions. And we're not allowing our communities to define us. And so that's another conversation. I think that's one of the other questions that we'll be addressing. But that's the misconception is the furthest thing from the truth.
Hey, Susan, would you like to chime in?
I so appreciate those comments. And part of, it's interesting, as we've been doing this research on, and with Black donors and Black family foundations, to your point, it's who we are. We are not looking for the sort of the recognition. And I even struggle, family, I struggle with the more recent campaigns to label us as philanthropists. It's actually not our word. It's not how we describe who we are and what we do. It's just who we are and what we do. And as I even talk with high net worth, donors, the Donors Network of Color that I was speaking about earlier convenes Black donors and other donors of color that give at very high sort of levels, at least $75,000 a year. To the point, Black people in the network Latinos in the network, folks of color, because communities of color have rich, right, philanthropic histories, sort of reject this notion of I am a philanthropist. It's who we are. So that's part of the challenge, right? We're not looking for the recognition, but it's not how we describe what we do. We tithe, right? We are our sister's keeper. We pay it forward. There are ways in which we talk about this that doesn't necessarily use that term. So I'm often challenged with trying to do so, yeah.
So that's great conversation here and really just educating people about what philanthropy is and how, and there are certain benefits to that as well. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But all of us know that during this recent COVID crisis, it sort of highlighted a lot of needs of disparities in the communities so that we can strengthen our own communities. What are some of the successes that have been achieved in the philanthropy space during these times? Dr. McKee, I think you can take that one.
Sure. You know, a couple of things. Let's start with what COVID-19 showed us. It reaffirmed all that we already knew around social fissures and opportunity gaps for African American people. We knew that. What it also showed us, and I'll speak specifically from a faith lens, it was amazing to talk to clergy colleagues around the country, because when we started moving to hybrid and shutting down worship services, and the first thing everybody thought about was, oh my goodness, we can't give, and congregations are sustained by charitable giving, and so if we can't give, we can't sustain congregations. Here's what amazingly happened for many congregations. We watched people give more. We watched people give more. We watched people help more people. We watched more students get scholarships. We watched more people get fed. We watched that spirit of cooperation come together in a way that really, I don't have any science on this, but anecdotally, it seems like when the press of society gets on Black people, we do more, which I think is a really important story and narrative to tell, in keeping with this idea that giving is not done for the sake of just saying, I give, but it's done because we are investing in a need and investing in ourselves. I thought that was so powerful, right? And so COVID in so many ways, especially because COVID has taken place at a time where, conversations around the ongoing struggle for Black lives, the ongoing struggles for, political and social agency, and all these things that are happening at the same time. Right, so as we're dealing with health issues, we're looking at, social realities that keep on repeating themselves, and yet these become opportunities for people to give of their time, of their talent, of their treasure. I'll share one story and I'll move out of the way. I think as a pastor, one of the most gripping moments when we first started engaging COVID, it is doing a food drive with masks and gloves and face shields and all these things on, but understanding people still need food. Right? So even though we are potentially putting ourselves in danger, right? People still need. And so COVID, as terrible as these couple of years have been, and that's a whole other conversation for another panel, but it has shown us that the spirit of giving is so resilient in our communities that in the most pressured moments when we think people would actually close their pockets, they open them more deeply. And that's just remarkable to me.
Absolutely. That's absolutely remarkable. So thank you for sharing that. We've got a lot of questions to get through, and it's such a rich conversation, but we know we can't keep you here all day. But I will just ask Dr. Cole to speak on this question. In what ways do you see that viewing philanthropy holistically can bring about community transformation?
At the risk of saying something that is a little out of our circle of conversation, I'm going to do it. I think that philanthropy, in one of its most amazing expressions, is when one gives of one's very being in opposition to injustice. And having said that, which I think again is a little out there for how we usually think about philanthropy, you know, from the moment that Black folk arrived in what is our country, we've been pushing against injustice. Now, when we say philanthropy, we tend to not want to talk about the civil rights movement. That was the greatest philanthropic movement that Black folk could have organized. When I think about the women's movement, and if you've seen one woman, you ain't seen us all. I'm talking about the movement for all women's rights. Then Sojourner Truth has got to be one of the greatest philanthropists. And so when we give of our material wealth, hopefully we're not giving it to build mansions. We're giving it in the interest of social justice.
Thank you so much for that. Mic drop, what they call a mic drop. Yeah, drop the mic on that one. We have just a couple of more questions, and I want to leave some time for all of you to ask questions as well. So I'm going to ask each of the panelists briefly to share one thing that anyone can do to become a philanthropist in the community. We'll start with you, Susan.
You know, I think I'd go back to some of the closing comments. Well, one, to take the time to understand the stories of Black philanthropy and the history, the deep history of our community, because I think the stories are so compelling that it helps us see ourselves as givers and not just receivers of help and support. So I would put my dime there to really focus in on and understand the stories of philanthropy in our community. Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Cole?
Sister Wanda, I think the one thing everyone can do is give something. Just give something. I didn't say how much. I didn't say in what way. Just give something. And I'm thinking about a particular song. You know, one way to understand any people, this is the anthropologist speaking, is listen to their stories, listen to their songs, be a part of their celebrations. The song I want to call forth is, if I can help somebody, my life will not have been in vain. Do something to help somebody.
That's excellent. Yeah, and I would say in the effort to do something, find something that resonates with what you value personally. What I found early on in giving is that if I did things that others valued, if I helped with initiatives that others valued, I didn't have the stick-to-itiveness or the consistency that I wanted. It was easy to get started, but easy also to drop off from that. So for me, finding value in education, it was deeply rooted in why our family had had the success we had had, because my father, who came from a mother who had only had an 11th grade education and a father who had only had an 8th grade education, wound up going to an Ivy League school. So education helped him make a big leap. It was foundational to our family. And so it meant a lot to me. So when it comes to education and giving, that's where I find so much value. It richly fills me. It fills every part of me, and I don't need to get a dollar return or a pat on the back to know that I'm making impact in that area. So what I would say is find an area where you find value, where it feeds you, and then go give so richly there, whether it's just helping one student or helping one cause or helping one drive or helping one initiative. And then when you're able to, you're crawling before you're walking before you're running. If you're able to then to give meaningful dollars, and then the magic, the secret sauce is influencing other people to do this work with you, right? That is the collective work. Influencing others to do that work, that's where you have a multiplying and exponential impact on the communities and the individuals we serve.
Well, thank you. I would say participate. I didn't say start something new. Find something that you have a passion around and participate. I can't tell you how many calls I get in a given week where someone is calling me about this fantastic idea they have regarding starting a nonprofit because it's not being done. And so, find something you have passion around, participate, be a part of it, remove the egos. You don't have to be the boss. You don't have to run it. But the impact that we can have collectively. Can I share a real fun fact before we go on? Something I found through the readings. Do you know how much we can accumulate if every Floridian gave at least $220 annually? Any idea? Audience participation. See if you're still there.
No prize, but anyway.
Well, here's the fun fact for you, and I'll tell you where I got this from. If every Floridian contributed $220 annually, it would bring in about $5.8 billion. And I got that from the Florida Lottery. So that's how they developed their budget. So just think about that. The impact. I thought it was very interesting. We think it's just a small amount.
Yeah.
And the impact that it could actually have.
Well, amen. Time, talent, treasure, testimony. For me, I think it's real simple. If we look at a month and think of each week, is there a space where we're giving some time? Is there a space where we're giving some talent? Is there a space where we're giving some treasure? And is there a space where we're utilizing our unique testimony to help somebody? And I want to say specifically, since this is a conversation around Black philanthropy, and is it being invested in a Black organization? Whether that be faith-based, whether that be civic, whether that be a nonprofit, whether that be a service organization, because that's something that everyone, whether we are of African descent or not, can do that helps to build out the opportunities of helping all people. But I think that's really important because that, one of the concerns that has always been a part of Black institutional life is longevity and the ability to be sustainable. Because we've done so much, especially when we talk about, from my perspective, the faith community, we've done so much on a tight budget. And that's across the board. That's for our colleges, our organizations, our churches, and yet we've done phenomenal things. So what if we had a little bit more of that $220 a year to put toward those efforts? That I believe is really the paramount spirit of Black philanthropy.
Wow. So I want to just take a moment and thank our panelists for sharing their stories and their time with us. This is just the beginning of the conversation. There's so much more work left to do. And all of you being here this morning really just shares your level of commitment for helping us at the Community Foundation to build a better community through stimulating philanthropy. At this time, I would like to take a couple of minutes if there are any questions in the audience that you would like to ask any of our panelists. We do have a couple of minutes before we close out. Any questions? I'll go to Martha and then Michelle.
To your question, we've all got to say amen and a women too. As an educator, as a human being, I am profoundly concerned about what happens to my democracy, to my nation, when what is to be taught is determined by people who seem to care far more about their power and their privilege than our children. This is an incredibly dangerous period that we're all living in. This isn't a political statement. This is a statement about being human. So I join you in being concerned. But if being concerned is all I am, what am I going to do about this? I'm not going to shock you. I'm going to say exactly what you expect me to say. Vote.
Thank you, Dr. Cole. I think Ms. Burke had a question.
First of all, I just want to say thank you. You are just amazing. I had a wealth of knowledge today. But my main question is, how do we let people know about endowments? I started an endowment for my son, started in November 1st of last year. He tragically died of osteosarcoma, which is bone cancer, at the age of 16, and we fought it for 3 years. I didn't know until my husband's CEO contacted Community Foundation. We sat down with them, and they told us just $50,000 if we raised that money would give scholarships forever in my son's name, Taylor Charles Burke, where a child will receive a 4-year scholarship every year. And now we directed that to our Title I schools, which is Rains, Ribault, First Coast, and plus the school Jackson that he attended. Just $50,000. And when I tell my friends and other colleagues that $50,000 would give 4-year scholarships, and there's an increase in interest this year, next year will be the first one that it will be awarded the year that he will graduate it. But in 10 years from now, it'll be 10 scholarships. 20 years from now, it'll be 20 scholarships. 50 years from now, it'll be 50 scholarships, just for that meager $50,000. And it's like no one knows it about this little secret. It's like a little secret. And I'm talking about, well, I'm a pharmacist, so I'm telling my other colleagues, I know physicians, I know all these people, and I'm telling them this information, and they're looking at me like in deer in headlights. And I know we've left this behind for our children in our passing, and that's the only thing they need to do is put $50,000, because we have left them money behind where $50,000 would have not been a lot, and it would have so many other children. So how do we bridge that gap? And that second question, Ms. Jenkins, you asked that question. After we finished the endowment, we wanted to start a nonprofit for Taylor. Because the egregious point was the same treatment my baby received was the same treatment for 1985. He may have survived if it was genotherapy. The first thing I asked the oncologist, what is the genotherapy? And they just looked at me in deer headlights. I did second opinions. I made calls out to England. I even spoken to Dr. Warman at CHOPS, who was the leading pathologist and over osteosarcoma. He was the chairman of the board for the whole United States, personally. Even he was like, we're behind on genotherapy. It should be a point like sickle cell. When a child is born, there are traits that are there that we should know about, that we can be proactive and not reactive. I don't feel my child should have passed. I don't think any baby's child should pass. And I'm tired of fighting a battle that federal dollars, only 5% goes to childhood cancer. It's like they don't want them to live.
Yeah, I just, okay, great. Thank you for that question. You know, when the work that we're doing in philanthropy, there's so much education that we have to do in our community to actually sort of increase the understanding about how do we sustain institutions in our community and the like. And I love the fact that you were pointing out, brother, that we do so much with little dollars. A colleague of mine, John Jackson, president of the Schott Foundation for Public Education up in New England, says Black organizations are always doing less with more. Imagine what we would do if we actually had more. We'd be doing more, right? We are helping to move a campaign called Endow Now. And it is just that. It's actually to increase understanding across the Black community about building endowments. We are quite concerned, given the political divisive environment that we are in, that Black organizations, and I'm going to go there now, are actually under attack. The explicit focus that we have on Black communities, there are more people emboldened these days that are coming after Black nonprofits. We've had our share ourselves at ABFE. And I think it is critically important that we move to endow as many Black-led organizations, historical Black colleges now, because I think the attacks will actually get stronger and more fierce. So this is about education of philanthropy. This is about the focus of these donors forums, right, is to educate our community. One of the best things we did at ABFE was to connect with the National Association of Security Professionals. That is the Association of Black Investment Managers in this country, right? And sit with them, with Black-led nonprofits, and talk about endowment building. So one, I just want you all to know that there is a campaign growing that we are getting behind called Endow Now. It is to do just that, sister, to increase understanding and awareness about endowment building. We're actually raising a fund at the Schott Foundation. I'm actually on the board, a $5 million fund to endow several education justice organizations around the country. And we want this to spread. Education, connection with Black wealth managers who know this stuff, and they're in our community, who know this stuff and can work with nonprofits specifically. So it's really important.
And let me just say real quick, briefly. So I do a lot with wealth management, legacy planning, and in specific around philanthropy, but even endowments. And so thank you for telling your testimony. It is a story that others in this room need to hear, and some extremely are passionate about that specific cause. And I would say, and I've had a couple clients who've either had a child or a relative pass away due to either a medical issue or just due to some sort of accident, right? So the question is number one, and grief is sort of a spectrum, right? But after you sort of deal with grief, then the question is how? And so the education piece, I think, is important. Thank God you got together with Community Foundation, which I think has made such a huge impact in this community, right? But the how of doing it, the vehicles, how to do it, where to go to get the information, that's something that I usually do all day long. It's just pairing you up with someone like a wealth management advisor to give you that information. The second part that you talked about was even so, like what we talked about, unity and doing it together, like $50,000 minimum. You talked about the hurdle of like, how do we start an impact fund, right? Like $50,000 is just not chump change, right? So how do I do it and not do it alone, right? Because I realize other people are hurdling and battling this. So the real question is, how do we do this? And I think and I don't know, I put it out to Community Foundation. I don't know if they have a way to communicate that to its donors and those who've started funds and foundations, family foundations or donor advised funds. Like if someone is in need and they are looking to seed a fund, how do we do that? We have a donor advised fund. Had I known something like that, I would be willing to contribute to someone else's fund, right? So I'm saying it's each one help one, right? Do something, right? So even if it's a small seed, it sows a seed in order to help that cause, right? So I think we are our brothers are our sisters' keeper here. The other aspect you talked about, which is the social impact. How do you make cause? And like Valerie said, like everyone, like I had a couple clients who everyone wants to start some charitable organization. Everybody wants to start a charitable organization. And I usually ask, how much time do you want to invest in that? Or is it the word you want to bring about change? And there may be other vehicles, social media, to bring about change.
Thank you for that, Marcus. And another thank you to all of our panelists for sharing in such great dialogue this morning. And as we talked about, education is really the key to all of this. So this is just our first opportunity to have this kind of open dialogue with you surrounding Black philanthropy, but it certainly will not be our last. So we will continue the conversation. But before we close, I wanted to just share a little bit of information with all of you. In October of 2020, 22 community stewards convened to engage in purposeful dialogue around establishing a Black philanthropic fund that would be initiated, led, and supported of the Black community in Jacksonville. The Community Foundation for Northeast Florida is proud today to introduce our newest initiative. Today we introduce the A.L. Lewis Black Opportunity and Impact Fund. This collective giving fund is established at the Community Foundation for Northeast Florida. The mission is clear: to advance equity and justice in healthcare, education, and economic development through strategic investments in Jacksonville's Black community. We are extremely grateful to Sister Dr. Janetta Cole, great-granddaughter of A.L. Lewis, for her support and the use of his name and likeness for the purpose of this fund, and to all of our founding circle members. And many of you are here this morning. If we could have our founding members please stand for the A.L. Lewis. So as we talk about the opportunity to strengthen our Black community, guess what? This is one. So today is merely our launch and introduction of the A.L. Lewis Black Opportunity and Impact Fund, but more to come. And before you leave this morning, we have some information that we'd like to share with all of you to learn more about this exciting initiative at the Community Foundation. Yes. Absolutely, the floor is yours.
Well, I'm just deeply moved, not surprised. I knew the announcement was coming. But I just want to say this, and I need Brother Rev to support me. Up in glory, A.L. Lewis is shouting with joy. And near him are two women who were his besties, Clara M. White and Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. My brother and I could not feel more humbled, joined by somebody else up in glory, the beach lady, our sister. What a joy it is. What a privilege it is for all of us to be able to give in the name of someone who gave so much to this city, to our nation. Abraham Lincoln Lewis.
Well, I think that's a great way for us to end this wonderful morning, and I hope that you all have just enjoyed this conversation. But more than that, I hope that you will take this as an opportunity to become a friend of the Community Foundation for Northeast Florida. When we were talking earlier about building trust, this is just the beginning, and we are excited for what is to come. So thank you again for joining us this morning. Thank you to our panelists and certainly our keynote speaker. And thank you to JTA for allowing us to use their amazing facility. And also, if there is anyone interested in taking a tour, there is a wonderful historical tour of this wonderful building. Please take time to do that. And there's also breakfast back there. And if you all don't eat it, then I will have to. So again, thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.